Hey guys, what's up? It's Finch here. Today we're going to be covering Urshifu Single Strike, and we're going to be discussing what sets it likes to use, what the potential partners for it could be, and different forms of counterplay for it, as well as some other relevant interactions. So let's start off with discussing the sets it uses. Of course, the Choice Band set is just ridiculously good. Some might argue it's broken. In fact, we're going to kind of go into my opinion on that, why maybe Urshifu Single Strike is too much for the metagame as it stands right now, what could be done to keep it in check, and also what partners make it even better. So we're going to start off again with the Choice Band set. It tends to run Close Combat, Wicked Blow, and Poison Jab. The fourth move can be Sucker Punch or U-Turn, but some other options. Over Poison Jab, the Fairy types, you can run Iron Head. You do lose out on hitting Primarina and Azumarill for super effective damage. However, you're hitting Weezing Galar with super effective damage, and Weezing is picking up more and more usage on the ladder lately, specifically to check things like Urshifu and also to negate things like Huge Power on Azumarill. In general, Weezing Galar is a pretty cool niche Pokemon, but this video is not about that. It's about Urshifu, so we're just going to say it's another option. Last but not least, Sleep Talk is also something I personally tinker with on teams that are a bit annoyed by Amoonguss, because if you don't have something like Mandibuzz to absorb, Mandibuzz or Ferrothorn to absorb Spore and just kind of set up on it or trip it down, then it actually is a little annoying to sacrifice Pokemon in Sleep. And in Generations 5 and even 6, a common practice was throwing a Sleep Talk user on a team, just like on a choice Pokemon in the fourth slot, so that you can always take advantage of Sleep, especially if they don't anticipate it like this generation. So for example, let's say they go for Spore, like they see you asleep, so they want to go to their Stealth Rocker. Let's say they go to Chansey, predicting you to switch out or just like waste a Sleep turn or whatever, and try and go for Rock. But you could pummel them on the switch in, or even on the next turn, and that's just really amazing application of Urshifu. So it's something that we really saw when Sleep was more prominent in generations like 4, 5, and 6. In particular 4 and 5, but then Sleep got banned in Generation 4. And in Generation 4, Sleep Talk only works for one turn with choice items, so you gotta switch out right after, wake up or not, pretty much, or it's kind of just useless. So it's finally back to being a viable alternative. We also saw me use Sleep Talk 4th on my X-Cloud the other day in a Sticky Web video. So I think it's definitely a really promising option with Amoonguss seeing an uptick in usage, but right now I think the predominantly common moves are the first 5, Close Combat, Wicked Blow, Poison Jab, Sucker Punch, or U-Turn. And as for what they do, what the set is, I also want to say you could also run Adamant. Adamant allows you to 2-KO things like Hippowdon and Tangrowth, and Skarmory, I believe. But regardless of that, it's an absolute menace in the metagame. It's very hard to deal with. There's only really one true counter to it, and that would be Weezing Galar. However, there are a number of checks to it, and we're going to get into all of those checks in the coming times, but I just want to say that the stab combination of Close Combat, which is 120 base power, and Wicked Blow, which is 80 base power, to Critical Hits Always, which is essentially 120 base power, is absolutely amazing. You're hitting everything besides Fairy types. I mean, look, go through every single Steel type. You're either, knocking them out with Wicked Blow because they're Ghost types like Aegislash, or just destroying them with Close Combat like Bisharp, Excadrill, Ferrothorn's getting one-shotted even if it's low defensive. I mean, you go down the list. Klefki's getting one-shotted, probably. Agirna's getting 2-hit. Magnum's getting destroyed. Yeah, obviously Stanislash Lola as well. Although it's not really all your Pokemon. As for Wicked Blow, it has amazing neutral coverage. It's able to hit things like Amoonguss and Toxics for 2-KO, which are things that we're going to get into in a bit. But also, of course, things that are immune to or resistant to the fighting type, as we mentioned, aforementioned Aegislash. Also, you're able to just destroy things like, Dragology or Executor, just like random examples of resistances. But more helpful, it's great at taking out Ghost types like Gengar, Dragapult, and I guess also Marowak Alola, And then you have Poison Jab. It's a good coverage move. It's able to hit things like Azumarill. Oh my god, wrong Pokemon. A starting name Pokemon. Wow. All of a sudden, I cannot talk. My bad, guys. Yeah, it's great against Azumarill, but also it's able to nab things like Togekiss, and it can even one-shot a especially defensive Clefable if you're adamant you get the right roll. But of course, Ironhead does the same as well, and that hits Weezing Galar, so it's cool. And then Sucker Punch is great in a pinch to help revenge things like Alakazam and Volcarona, especially if they're unsuspecting. However, it can be taken advantage of if you're locking into a move. For example, I've tried to Sucker Punch and bulk up Cinderace when it was at low health, but then it bulked up against me and it got not only a free turn on the Sucker Punch, but then I was forced to switch out because he saw I was locked in the Sucker Punch, so all of a sudden he gets an instant +2. And the next time I come in, even if it's still low and in range, it's still another 50-50. So there's definitely some downside to it, especially because you're trying to revenge a lot of setup sleepers. Again, Korbinite, Volcarona, Nasty Plot / Recover Alakazam, and Bulk Up Cinderace are just 3 examples. So it's hard. It's definitely really challenging for that to work. With that said, though, it does have a lot of upside if you're able to make it work. So it's definitely worth considering. Of course, U-turn is a great option as well. It lets you chip things like the aforementioned Clefable. And it also kind of is a mid-ground option if you're not sure what to predict into, and they might have like things that could really punish you if you get the wrong move. So yeah, mid-grounds are something that are really interesting in the game of Pokemon, and I think it's a lot of things that kind of are a bit less tangible that we need to explore in our gameplay that helps us really improve as battlers. So I definitely recommend looking into options like that for the newer players who just kind of want to get a feel for the game. But anyway, there's also another set, a set that I showcased in a live the other day. Personally, I think that Choice Band Urshifu is what you're going to be using 9, maybe 9.5 out of 10 times, honestly, because it's just that good. And passing up on the immediate power is just hard to do. But on the right team, a sub bulk up Urshifu is actually deadly because it comes in on things like Toxapex. And yes, the spread is indeed for the Toxapex Scald. And it's just able to absolutely destroy those teams, especially if they're running like Whirlwind Hippowdon or Skarmory. And Skarmory is really never picked up quite yet. So able to set up on those Pokemon and just go to town. I mean, it's very hard to take care of this Urshifu. Sub, bulk up, Wicked Blow, Drain Punch. You could run a close combat with Drain Punch, but I dislike only having 16 attacking PP. And on top of that, I dislike the defense trap that come alongside it because one wrong prediction and then all of a sudden everything's breaking your sub or potentially even killing you from the special end. So yeah, Drain Punch is great to recover. You could set up on things like the aforementioned Toxapex. You could set up on Chansey. If I managed to set up on some other things as well in that video, I think there's like a Mew, Slowbro, yeah. So a lot of times they're going to try and go for a status move, like Amoonguss is Spore, Toxapex going for, a Toxic or a knockoff, Tangrowth going for a Sleep Powder or a Stun Spore. I mean, even things like, say, what's another example? Rotom Heat going for a Toxic. I guess all of them are viable options. Oh, Slowbro, Slowbro is dying to Choice Band Wicked Blow. So if it sees your leftover, Slowbro might go for a Thunder Wave anyway. So yeah, there are plenty of things, and you can just sub up on all of them and then bulk up Wicked Blow through the normal things that you Wicked Blow through, and Drain Punch you can obviously just close combat through. But there is a huge downside of this set, and that is that things like Togekiss are going to be really hard to break through without multiple boosts and getting stealth strike damage on it if it's not heavy duty boots, because a lot are running leftovers. And in addition to that, Physical Defensive Clefable, which is increasingly common, is also going to be really challenging to break through without like a knock and maybe paralysis on the top of that, because Moonblast is just going to completely destroy you. Same with Air Slash from the aforementioned Togekiss. So yeah, there are definitely some downsides. However, the Choice Band set, the one that is predominantly worth discussing, and the one that in my opinion is far and away the best set, I just think it really deserves a lot of attention right now. And I think it's borderline broken in the metagame as it stands. In fact, I would go as far as saying that if there was one Pokemon that I would be banned in the metagame, it would be Urshifu. And I think that if it stands as is right now, while I'm not saying I would necessarily vote ban, I would be in favor of a suspect if the metagame holds for the next week or two. Now, let's discuss this aspect of timing really quickly, because timing in suspects is something that's been controversial for years. It's something that a lot of people happen to disagree with council members on. So I believe that holding a suspect right now is a bit futile. The metagame was released just last week. It's currently the 26th. I believe it came out the 19th or 20th? I think the 19th was the day it came out, roughly then. Either way, the day DLC released aside, the metagame has completely turned on it upside down since then. The metagame that we saw prior to DLC was completely different from the metagame we saw, say, last week on Saturday or Sunday during, say, the charity tour, which we raised $10,000 for Black Lives Matter charity for in the first DLC tournament, or the metagame we saw on Tuesday and Wednesday on the ladder. And that metagame that we're seeing earlier this week is completely different from the metagame we're seeing later this week in the preliminary World Cup games, one of which I'll bring to you guys in a video later today. Or, the metagame we might see on Monday or Tuesday next week. So what I'm trying to say is, with the first tournament games flowing in, and more importantly with the ladder seeing different techs, different reactionary pieces to the Pokemon that we're seeing really dominate, everything's still reacting to each other. Everything's still falling into place. Standards are developing, and they're developing at an increasingly high rate. Don't get me wrong, but they're not completely developed yet. And until we see what those standards are and how the tier settles, we're not going to truly know if it's a hospitable metagame to hold a suspect test or to potentially ban something. Because right now, something like, say, Magearna might seem really good to a lot of people, but in a week, because there are a lot of accessible counters out there, as I outlined, those counterplay options could become better options, not only for Magearna, but also for checking other things. Like, there's some overlap between Alakazam and Volcarona, and, say, Togekiss checking alongside Magearna, or even Aegislash checking. And the fact of the matter is that overlap is going to make certain metagame trends better and worse, and that could make something more broken or less broken relatively to how it was before. the fact of the matter is that how good something is always relative to the metagame around it. It's always a reactionary thing. The term broken largely is a product of the metagame. There's very rarely seen a Pokemon that's broken in any metagame, no matter how it's played. And those Pokemon tend to be like universally agreed to be quick bannable, and there's nothing in the metagame that has reached those heights at this point in time. So the fact of the matter is that holding a suspect right now is just kind of futile. But let's say we wait another 2 to 3 weeks, even 1 to 2 weeks, for example, because I'm not saying it's going to be a long thing. And we notice the metagame settling, and we notice that, okay, Urshifu is really problematic. Then I think personally, if it stands as is in terms of how effective Urshifu is, maybe the puzzle pieces around it change a little bit, but how effective it is. Right now I'd say it's like a 9 out of 10 Pokemon. If it stays there, given how strong it is and given how limiting it is, especially with things like Future Sight, Teleport, Slowbro, which we're going to get into in a minute, or Thunderwave support from things like Slowbro and Clefable, then I actually believe that I would be in favor of a suspect of Urshifu. Again, this is like a 1, 2, 3 week thing down the line. It's not a right now thing, because I think right now holding a suspect is futile, but yeah, I could definitely see it happening, and I think I'd favor it just because it's really limiting in a lot of ways. And while it is a really rewarding Pokemon and it punishes the passivity that the metagame unfortunately displayed in excess prior to DLC, there's also other Pokemon that are able to do the same thing, such as Offensive Magearna, Libero Cinderace, which in my opinion is an underrated godsend of the metagame, Nasty Plot Alakazam, and we could go down the list. Heracross is a great option. Holucha and Rillaboom are becoming increasingly common and they're great in the metagame. Marowak is great at punishing that passivity as well. Yeah, and I mean, things like Slowbro enable a lot of breakers with Teleport. The other Urshifu is never really developing as an amazing Pokemon, but hey, you never know what happens in the future. And last but not least, there's also Volcarona to punish those kind of bulky Clefable cores as well, in particular if they lack things like Chansey, which is not super common right now, but is seeing some usage. So yeah, all things considered, I think Choice Band Urshifu is probably a top 3 Pokemon in the metagame, and I think it's definitely the most quote-unquote broken Pokemon. I'm not saying I'd vote ban, but I am pro-suspect, and here is why. So, as we're going to see in a second, there are some really great partners for Urshifu. And the first one is Pokemon I want to highlight with the most emphasis. It is Teleport Slowbro. So Teleport Slowbro from day one has synergized amazingly with it. Personally, I use Thunderwave, Scald, Slack Off, and Teleport, but my friend Eo Mortis, a fellow council member and just an amazing tournament player who's always came up with some really revolutionary attacks in the metagame. For example, last generation, he invented Wish Clefable, which just completely changed how people used it. Wish Clefable in SMOU, while it didn't have access to Teleport with negative priority like it did this generation, was really cool at helping support balance teams and honestly opened up so many different options in team building. But this generation, in the charity tournament, which we raised $10,000 for Black Lives Matter charity again last weekend, and the stream is available on Twitch TV /schmog on you in case you're curious. We went on for 7 hours discussing the SS metagame and going over tournament games. But yeah, no, Future Sight Slowbro is really cool because let's say it's turn 1, you lead with your Slowbro, you click Future Sight. Okay, let's say they go to their Clefable or their Chansey or their, insert Stealth Rock Starter that's not Marowak, Excadrill. Even they go to their Como. Yeah, they go to one of their Pokemon Step Stealth Rock. They click Stealth Rock and you click Teleport turn 2. Or you click Teleport really because not many things are one-shotting you besides opposing Urshifu, Aegislash, and like Volcarona. So just go to something that doesn't kill you, something to try and cripple you. And it's fine. You take a status, you take a Toxic or a Scald Burn or a Thunderwave, and you teleport out, and you bring in your Urshifu, and you threaten to kill them. Or you threaten to 2-KO them and they can't kill back. Because that's the case against a lot of Pokemon in metagame, as you know with the Choice Band set. It's just that devastating. With Future Sight, all of a sudden, their instinct is to go to something like Toxapex or Mungus. Because, why? While they might be 2-KO'd by Wicked Blow, they're able to sponge that hit. It's only going to be doing 50, 60%, especially the Toxapex, but also to something like Rocky Helmet Mungus. But they can't go to it. They can't go to it because it's going to be taking Future Sight. So all of a sudden, you're not free to close combat because they're more obligated to go to something like their Mandibuzz or to go to something like their, insert other dark type, say Grimmsnarl or Hydreigon, to take that Future Sight. But if you Wicked Blow into them, it's fine because they're going to take resisted damage and they're going to be immune to Future Sight. But if they close combat in them, they're going to die. But if you close combat into the Poison type, like Amoonguss and Toxapex, then all of a sudden, that's going to be enough to kill them. Or alternatively, if you close combat into a Fairy type, like Clefable, the close combat plus the Future Sight, even if it's running the 160 defense EVs for taking 2 hits from Adamant Urshifu, and more importantly, Holucha, because this was specifically for you, only did 136 for Adamant Urshifu. Then close combat plus Future Sight plus close combat is going to result in it dying in 2 turns. I don't want to call it a 2-KO because you need the Future Sight to make the 2-KO, but it's kind of like a 3-KO in 2 turns, if you will. And this dynamic is really cool and exploitable, and honestly one of the most practical applications of Future Sight I've seen in an OU metagame for a long time. So first and foremost, a huge shout out to Eod Mortis for being kind of the architect of this team design. It also works really well with things like Crawdon if Urshifu is to ever get banned, or if you want to try something alternatively. Although the dual water synergy of Slowbro and Crawdon is admittedly a bit restricting, but with that said, it's amazing to see it in action. And I definitely think that Future Sight Slowbro is an amazing partner for the Urshifu, for the Choice Band Urshifu set, sorry. You can, of course, elect to run Thunderwave over Future Sight as well. Thunderwave helps slow things down, and more importantly, let's say you attack once into the opposing Clefable, and they're able to live 2 hits, but then as they softballed up as you switch out, they're going to get fully paralyzed, and then all of a sudden it's in 2-hit kill range next time, or it's in 1-shot range from Poison Jab, and that just makes your job a ton easier. In addition, getting a Thunderwave off on things like opposing Toxapex or Mandibuzz is great because they might not be able to recover off your damage as much or make progress themselves, which is just going to open up the game more and more for Urshifu. So that synergizes in a more direct fashion, or more indirect fashion, in a more long haul fashion, but Future Sight synergizes in a more direct fashion, and I think it's a really amazing core to highlight. So yeah, I definitely would try a balance or bulky offensive teams with Pivot Slowbro, with Future Sight, plus Urshifu. I think it's one of the most amazing just strategies in the metagame right now, and I think it's super slept on the ladder at the moment. Next up, of course, we have Magearna. Magearna is an amazing Pokemon, but in particular, I quite like this set when paired with Urshifu, because given that there's not as many ground types at the moment, Excadrill, of course, is a very common ground type, but that aside, we're seeing a slight downtick in Hippowdon, which is also threatened by Flare Cannon, and not fun to switch to Magearna very often. Things like Seismitoad are virtually non-existent at the moment. Other ground types, I mean, you see Crocodile here and there, but it's not switching to Magearna a lot. Lightning Rod Marowak just isn't as common as Rockhead right now. Hollow Sand's non-existent. Seismitoad, as we said, is just virtually non-existent. Yeah, I mean, you go down the list. Diggersby, you don't really see a ton of, nor do you see Mammoth's both with Flare Cannon. So yeah, you tend to be able to Volt Switch very freely in this metagame, which is really an amazing tool for any pivot Magearna. Personally, I prefer this set, but Assault Vest is interchangeable. It can work as well. Basically, getting the slow Volt Switch, as you see, I'm actually under-creeping a lot of things here. Getting the slow Volt Switch is just really cool in the metagame as it stands, and that is going to allow you to get Urshifu in very comfortably against things like a Toxapex. It's already taken Stealth Rock plus Volt Switch, and now all of a sudden, especially if you're adamant, Wicked Blow could actually kill a specially defensive variant, or it's always going to 2-hit KO it. And you can get to the point where it's weakened enough to where you know it's going to die, so then you could potentially go for a close combat, predicting them to go to their Mandibuzz or their, Dark Resist. That's arguably almost always, if it's not a Fairy type, going to be hit by a close combat, just because the combination of Dark and Fighting is just that good. And in addition to this, using Eerie Impulse lets you set down other sweeping Magearna, such as the Iron Defense variant, because you're just going to keep it so weak that you could eventually pivot into something like a Fire type or a Ground type to break through it, or any Swords Dance user, really. Among other things, or any like special boost. There's a whole slew of options. It's just basically, if you're leaving at -6 special attack, it's not going to be good for the Magearna user. They're probably going to want to switch out eventually. It also leaves it really susceptible to status and phasing. So yeah, it can stop those. Also can stop things like Combine Clefable and Combine Reneglis, which are annoying, but we're actually going to get to those two Pokemon, although Clefable in a different capacity. So let's use this as a segue. They go to Clefable. Clefable's Wish Teleport set has fallen from grace a ton. Admittedly, I think the Moonblast knockoff Thunderwave softball set, which you can also use Stealth Rock or Flamethrower or Encore or Healing Wish, among other things, is really good right now relative to this, but it still is viable because Teleport is going to enable you to get into things like Marowak, Volcarona, Alakazam, or more importantly for this video's purposes, Urshifu. Getting a free switch in and potentially free recovery from Wish, seeing as you might be taking, weaker hits like Scalds from Toxapex or Giga Drains from Mungus, or even, a Volt Switch from a Rotom Heat, etc. Or maybe a weak Brave Bird from Mandibuzz. It's going to do over half to you. Getting that Wish recovery is amazing, so that's really helpful. In addition to this, it gives you a check with things like Lucha, because you live a +2 acrobatics with the item knocked off with the 160 defense, which is just really great for Urshifu cores, because it's able to resist both your stabs and set up in your face, especially with the +1 defense, so you got to be careful there. Anyway, yeah, Clefable naturally is just a great partner to pretty much every offensive option with Teleport. Same goes for Slowbro, so definitely cool things to try and work into your balance teams with Urshifu. Next up, we have Korbinite, another slow U-turner. That's really the gist of it. This spread in particular also helps with other Urshifu, because you're always able to live an adamant hit, I believe after Stealth Rock, and get a Brave Bird off, which is going to be super strong against it. But yeah, it's mainly just to U-turn into things that can take advantage of, it being Urshifu, of course. It's really the gist of it. But the steel typing allows you to resist fire types, which is really cool. So you gotta resist fire types, maybe force them out and get a U-turn off into Urshifu, and then you could get pummeling. Next up, we have Rhea-Nicholas. While Rhea-Nicholas doesn't have the ability to pivot into it, it's really cool because A, the Assault Vest variant can run Future Sight to help with it, despite not having Teleport, but B, more importantly, Combine sets actually react the cores that are comprised of things like Toxpex with Mandibuzz, which are able to sort of soft wall it, because you can go Toxpex and Wicked Blow, then regenerate and go Mandibuzz or Magearna, whatever your Dark Resist is. And those cores in general tend to take advantage of non-Future Sight Urshifu teams, and Urshifu in general, which is one of the main downsides of Urshifu. However, Common Clefable absolutely destroys those cores unless you have something like the Eerie Impulse Magearna, or something like, a Marowak, which is only going to be able to switch in 1 or 2 times because Life Orb Psyshock is going to 2-KO it. So yeah, all things considered, Rhea-Nicholas is an underrated Pokemon in metagame, and while it is a bit more in the passive end, and there are things like opposing Urshifu and Marowak which can take advantage of it, those are only short-term answers. Thunder from Life Orb of Rhea-Nicholas can actually 2-KO Urshifu if it hits twice, and Psyshock can 2-KO Marowak, or if you Thunder a Rock Head variant, then you also can potentially paralyze it and at least 3-KO if not 2-KO it, depending on health. So yeah, Rhea-Nicholas is a really cool partner, just pure synergetically without the momentum element. On top of that, another good partner that's not generating momentum for it, but is threatening things for it, is Marowak. Not only does it give a Stealth Rock to punish things like Regenerated Toxpex and Amoonguss switching in, or force Defox or Mandibuzz on free turns, but also it's just a great punisher in the physical end of the spectrum, and it can help soften up walls and make sure they're always going to be 2-KO'd. In addition, it's a great thing to take advantage of Clefable, although you gotta watch out for knockoff, which is increasingly common on Clefable. So yeah, all in all, Marowak Alola is a great partner for Urshifu as well. So I hope you guys enjoyed this little partner section. Let me know what your favorite partner for Urshifu is in the comment section below. But next up, we're gonna be going over the potential checks and counters to it. But first, I want to give a shout out to my boys Wooloo and Wooper. If you guys could subscribe to my channel, it'd mean the world to me. We just passed 3,000 the other day, and we're already shooting up. We're around 3,200 right now as we speak, and it's been less than 2 days since I announced 3,000. So yeah, the rate at which we're growing is absolutely astronomical, and I appreciate the support so much, guys. I'm trying to help you guys learn the metagame and learn what might be better to use versus what might be worse to use through a whole series of videos here. And speaking of series, we're going to be coming out with a new series on Monday, and since we've been getting so much support, I'm actually going to spoil the name of the series now. It's going to be called Metagame Mondays. We've been doing a ton of metagame coverage, such as videos like this, but as the DLC grows further and further away, we're going to switch more back to, OU Lives every day and tournament coverage and whatnot. But I've decided I want an outlet on this channel to do metagame content at least every week, so we're going to try and do 1 or 2 metagame videos every single Monday, no matter what, be it months past the DLC or just next week, so definitely stay tuned for that. We might even be covering some playstyle analysis, as a lot of you guys have wanted to say, oh, how to use hyper offense, or bulky offense, or balance, or even stall, in the comment section below. So we're going to be covering all of those and more on Metagame Mondays, so definitely stay tuned for that. The first one's going to be coming out on Monday. But that aside, definitely give me a subscription if you guys enjoy this content, and also let me know your thoughts in the comment section. That's most important to me, and be sure to like these videos. Next up, we're going to go counterplay. There are, in my eyes, 3 different forms of counterplay that I want to cover, and then also some other important interactions that aren't really counterplay oriented, just things that I want to note. The first one is the best counter to it. It's Wheezing Galar. As you see, with base 120 defense and the ability to resist both of the stabs in the fighting, as Fire resists that, in the Dark, which Fire resists, coupled with the fact that the Poison typing is able to help with the fighting resistance as well. And to make it matters even better, you're able to resist Poison Jab, which is more common than Iron Head right now. Will be immune to it due to the Poison typing as well. So unlike other fairies, you don't risk getting too shadowed, and it's just a great answer. It is Pain Split for recovery, or you can pair it with a Wish User. On top of that, Strange Team can get a one-shot, and you can also take advantage of it with things like Sludge Bomb, Toxic Spikes, Corrosive Gas, etc. Weezing has a whole slew of very interesting moves in the metagame. Aromatherapy, Destiny Bond, Defog, Flamethrower, Fire Blast, Memento, and offensive teams, Pain Split for increased survivability, Sludge Bomb, Sludge Wave, Strange Team, Thunderbolt, Toxic Spikes, Will-O-Wisp, Taunt. Yeah, you name it. It's a really cool Pokemon. I definitely would recommend trying this out if you're strapped for Urshifu answers on a specific team. It also helps with things like Azumarill. Next up, we have the counterplay with these kind of regenerator cores. So basically, the scenario is, let's say Urshifu is in against something you want to threaten out, Chansey, or your own Urshifu locked into Wicked Blow, or a Bisharp, Tyranitar, etc. So what you want to do immediately is go to your physical defensive Amoonguss, or your Toxpex. You're going to be taking, if it goes for Wicked Blow, north of half, but you're able to potentially get Rocky Ammo damage off if you're using Amoonguss. And then what you're able to do from there is you're able to go to your Mandibuzz, which kind of is the second Pokemon here. Mandibuzz tends to run physical defensive now for things like Urshifu and Excadrill, and Mandibuzz is easily shrugging off Wicked Blow and covering up, but also this way you wasted 2 of the 8 Wicked Blow PP and potentially gotten Rocky Helmet damage onto it, and you forced it to predict right initially, predicting the poison type. So it's like 3 huge things right there, all for only gaining 15 to 20% damage on the Amoonguss or Toxapex. Maybe 20-25%, but still. All you need to do is get your Amoonguss or Toxapex in one more time before they get Urshifu in again, and you could live throughout all of the PPs of Wicked Blow doing this. It's just a really straightforward thing. Honestly, with the physically defensive Amoonguss with Rocky Helmet, and it only getting 4 of these sequences, if rocks are off the field, or you're able to get 1 extra regenerator in there in the middle to negate the damage done, you're actually always being able to check this. So, yeah, and if they go for close combat one time in the middle, predicting the Mandibuzz straight up because you went to Amoonguss the first time or two, then you're just hard-walling it as well. So it's just a really great core. I know this kind of intangible counterplay that's not like a specific counter is a bit more foreign to newer players, but rest assured, if you play these cores properly and you calc things out and you're smart about it, it's actually really possible to check Urshifu. However, the invention of the Future Sight Slowbro core with the Urshifu kind of invalidates this on those teams if you time things correctly, and that combination makes it really challenging for Urshifu to be kept in check, and all in all, I find that to kind of push it a little bit over the top. That's why I personally would be pro suspect in a week or two. That combination in particular, that kind of makes a big difference to me. Beforehand, though, Urshifu alone is arguably suspect worthy regardless, just because it forces something like that Weezing or these cores, and it limits the building of bulky offense or balanced teams in general. Thankfully, though, there is another form of counterplay beyond this core, and that would be the hyper-offensive archetype. This is just 6 hyper-offensive leads: Excadrill, Mew, Grimmsnarl, Acelgor, Ninetales, Lola, and Mamoswine. Nothing really like fancy in particular. All of these Pokemon have pretty solid matchups against Urshifu, in my opinion. Not like Pokemon, but the archetype as a whole, the teams that they bring alongside them, basically. So, for example, if you use a hyper-offensive team, Urshifu is very rarely coming in. They're going to be using a lot of setup sweepers that are pressuring you all the time, so you're going to, at best, get 1 entry with Urshifu that's safe and 1 kill with it. If even, maybe Sucker Punch can guarantee you some second life later on, but even then, they're still going to have resistances to both stabs. You're going to have to predict right, and since you're only getting in once, nothing that only gets in the game once, unless it's like a sweeper that just sweeps your team like Volcarona, could ever conceivably be broken, a breaker like that. Just because of the decreased, survivability of it and, accessibility of it. The fact of the matter is that Urshifu really struggles against faster teams that are going to keep the pressure on due to its really poor special bulk. And while its physical bulk is pretty nice, it's not able to take advantage of that to really take advantage of physical sweepers because, seeing a Azumarill out there a lot, Zeraora, Sword Stance, Aegislash is one thing you could potentially pick off. Then there's like Cinderace, Conkeldurr, Heracross. You can't really deal with those Pokemon in one hit. So yeah, all things considered, Hyper Offense is able to suffocate Urshifu, which is really cool. But next up, we're also going to be going over the, I just revealed teams there. Well, if you guys want to steal those teams, go ahead. But anyway, next up we have other important interactions. So Hippowdon, with leftovers, is able to check a Jolly Urshifu, almost always living 2 hits, especially if rocks aren't on the field. Same with Rock Helmet Tangrowth, but the big thing is Adamant, which is becoming increasingly common, is able to 2-kill both of them, especially with rocks, turning the roll completely in its favor, so gotta be careful of that. Also, U-turn chip in the Hippowdon is going to put it in the 2-kill range as well. And if it's Rocky Helmet, while you're doing more chip to Urshifu, you're actually worse against it defensively, despite doing more damage offensively, due to the fact that it now has a greater chance to 2-kill you with a leftovers recovery, especially with Stealth Rock again. And Tangrowth is a bit more naturally physically bulky, believe it or not, just because it has a whopping 125 defense relative to this 118. And yeah, similar base HPs, so yeah. But the downside is, the upside is you can run Rocky Helmet more often, but again, you'd lack things like Slack Off, you only have Regenerated Heal Up, you're not going to run Synthesis, so yeah. They're both soft checks, but not counters in my eyes, and I just wanted to note them as potentially, can be counterplay, but also a bit of a misconception saying they're counters because they're not. Close combat / wicked blows devastating to them as well. Next up, we have Clefable, a Pokemon that resists both stabs, but is always going to be 2-kill by Poison Jab. The thing is that people are shifting to running physically defensive oriented Clefable, more importantly for things like Urshifu, but also things like Alucha. I think this is a cool shift in the metagame, but it's still not a counter because Poison Jab, and again, if you pair it with things like Future Sight, you're able to 2-kill it, so it's a nice soft check, and it's a nice adaptation to the metagame, and Clefable is always going to adapt, so that's why it's always going to be good, even if it's not nearly as great as it was before, but unfortunately, again, I wouldn't classify it as a counter. Next up, Skarmory. Again, Adamant is going to be able to do similar damage to what it did to Hippowdon and what it did to Tangrowth, because while it has more defense, it's a lot less HP, so it kind of evens out, doing similar damage to these two than it did this. But again, it can only like Brave Bird or Body Press back, which can kill after a defense drop, but not from full health. So you gotta be careful. You can at least punish them more than things like Hippowdon though, which is cool. So I'd say it's a soft check, and physical defensive Hippowdon, Skarmory is really only seen on stall teams, so that sucks. Another thing is Chansey. It's one of the Pokemon that is really great as a wall, but it's taken advantage of entirely by Urshifu, which can one-shot it. Next up, we have Como-O, which is another big thing that I want to note. You're able to 2-KO it, but it can strengthen you back. It's kind of also a check to Wicked Blow, which is cool. So yeah, it can work on those cores with the Regenerator poison types, I suppose, as well. Especially if you're in Rocky Helmet on it to punish Wicked Blow. I think it's an underrated Pokemon metagame. I think it kind of got swept under the rug a little bit with the implementation of the DLC. Oh, I disconnected. Well, okay. This should still be recording though, right? Yeah, okay, then I don't mind the disconnect. But anyway, so yeah, those are some other things that noteworthy interactions with Urshifu. One last thing, Unseen Fist, the ability synergizes really nicely with Urshifu's ability to spam moves, if you will. I guess we just said a Pokemon synergizes with itself. That's not the right use of the word. It works really well, though, because it's able to punish things like Protect or Baneful Bunker. So Baneful Bunker Toxics is an all-time low. Protect Clefable is hit through if you go for that. And just the ability to bypass that form of counterplay to scout out the choice item is amazing. And I think that adds another element to how great Urshifu is in the metagame. But yeah, guys, this is my thoughts on Urshifu. Let me know if you think it's too good for the metagame, just good enough, or potentially underwhelming. I definitely love to hear your thoughts in the comments. If you like this type of content, be sure to drop a subscription. And last but not least, leave a like, guys. Thank you so much for the support. Let me know what you think of the trap sacks as well in the background. Definitely some new music I wanted to try out. I saw my boy Jimmy High Roller, a basketball YouTuber that I watch, and he has this in the background. It's just so smooth. So I figured, why not? Maybe it doesn't flow as well with my videos, though. I'll have to wait and see how you guys think. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on Urshifu, guys. Have a great day. Peace out.